Hey guys, welcome. Excited to dive into another exciting workshop today. When you guys are coming in, just for fun, go ahead and put in the chat, how has this been for you guys? We're like 10 days in, right? How's it been for you? Taking time to journal every day, intentionally taking time for your mindset? Recognition of the blocks momentum. Okay. Hey, Elle, that's good. Yeah, I think because I think things can go one of two ways probably at this point in it. You might be noticing like really big shifts in your mindset and you're just feeling great, or you might have some of that, but this also might be bringing to the surface some doubts or some limiting beliefs, and it's actually intentional. We want to bring those up, and that's really what we're going to be diving into today because we have to address those. Otherwise, they're just going to keep getting in the way. Yeah, Scott, sorry, this isn't quite the easiest journaling prompts. It's not just like, what are you grateful for? It's what was this morning's? What are you trying to prove to others? Right? Those are pretty hard journaling prompts, but hopefully it's really helping you do some deep reflection within yourself. Give people a couple more minutes. But we will have a lot to get into. So if you don't have a pen and journal with you yet today, make sure you have one of those. Also, for you guys who've been doing this every day, were you already prior to this a pretty good journaler, or is this a new habit that you've been forming over the past 10 days, taking this time? Okay, Sandra. Yeah. It's a new way to start journaling using a planner like that. I see. Well, let's dive into this. If anybody else logs on, they can do journaling. Not been consistent journaler. Yeah, and your journaling prompts don't have to be quite as intense as the one that I'm giving you. Uh, but I think it's really helpful to have some of both where you are doing the deep work. Okay, write articles. That's another good outlet, Scott. Very nice. Yeah, so anybody want to share things that they've noticed so far, even if it's by dreaming every day for a little bit? Are there themes that keep coming up into your head? Maybe there's certain things you want to do. Maybe it just feels really light, gives you some peace in the morning. What do you feel like are some things you've noticed by taking this time for yourself? Do you feel like it helps set you up for the day? Might be kind of hard to summarize in a sentence here. But all right, so what we're going to be talking about today is limiting beliefs. Notice you're not in alignment with your goals and what I am. Hey, that's a really good thing. Yeah, starting to notice a little bit more what's going on internally. And so today we're going to be talking about limiting beliefs. Are you guys all pretty familiar with the concept of limiting beliefs? I did find a definition here just on Google. So a limiting belief is a thought or a state of mind that you think is an absolute truth and stops you from doing certain things. These beliefs do not always have to be about yourself either. They could be about how the world works, ideas, and how you interact with people. So it could be as simple as like, I'm not enough, or I'm not smart enough to do that, or you can't trust others. That would be a limiting belief. If you feel like you can't trust others, you're probably not going to be able to grow a successful team if you can't trust them, right? So we're going to be trying to identify these limiting beliefs. And yeah, it looks like everybody's got some limiting beliefs. And why I think this is so important to address our limiting beliefs is if all we're doing is trying to just create new beliefs and we're not addressing the old ones, it's going to be really hard because there's a rocky foundation that we're trying to build it on. I always like to say that the first step to fix anything is first we need to identify what's broken, right? If you guys have listened to my podcast or researched any of the other things I did before this, I used to work in the automotive industry. And if somebody came to the dealership and they needed their vehicle fixed, they said, hey, my vehicle's not running right. We don't just go throw some parts on it, right? First, we have to identify what's broken and then we can fix it. And kind of as we're going through these exercises, I want to use the analogy of like a rusty car here, where if somebody came into the dealership and they had this rusty wheel well, now if all I did was got paint and we just sprayed new paint over top of this rust, would it actually solve the problem? Right? It wouldn't look right. You just have a whole bunch of these bubbles that are going on in there, and the problem would come back. And I bring this up because if we have some broken limiting beliefs in our mindset, and all we're doing is trying to like plant these new ones in there, and we're just spraying it with all these better affirmations or dreams, it'll look a little better, right? But it'll still have those bubbles, and those limiting beliefs will still break through. Really, to make a actual solution to the problem, we have to dig out those limiting beliefs, right? If you want to fix this car, you got to first break off all that rust. You got to sand it down. Then you got to maybe you have to replace the whole panel and paint a new one, or maybe you can put some Bondo in there. But we have to get rid of the rusty, broken parts first if we want to truly fix the problem. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today, is we're going to be trying to identify what our limiting beliefs are, so that way we can really use these mindset exercises to help us build going forward. Because I think, and maybe you guys have tried some of these mindset activities in the past. Maybe you've tried journaling or you've tried using affirmations, but you haven't gotten the results that you really wanted. It's probably because you were only focusing on the one side of this, of, spraying the new paint on there. Like, we have to do both. We have to create the new beliefs, but we have to find the broken beliefs and get rid of them at the same time. So what we're going to start with this is, I think, a really good tool for identifying what our limiting beliefs are is the whole concept of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Have any of you guys heard of the growth mindset versus fixed mindset? It came from Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. It's a great book. So we're going to spend a little bit of time with this, not a ton, because I know many of you have heard of it, but as a whole, she had studied thousands of different people, and she really wanted to find out what made successful people successful. And she wasn't just looking at rich people, right? She was studying successful parents or artists. She was just trying to find people who successfully accomplished the things they wanted in their life and what made them successful. And she found that generally came down to two things, or two mindsets that people could have. Somebody could have a fixed mindset, or somebody could have a growth mindset. Now, somebody with a fixed mindset, they would believe that you either have skills or you don't have skills. They would fear failure. They would fear judgment. We're going to talk about this a little more so you'd understand why. But they would have some sort of fixed statement, something like, I can't afford this, or this person is annoying, right? That's fixed. Doesn't really go anywhere. Versus there were other people who had a growth mindset. They believed skills could be learned or grown. They embraced failure. They overcame judgment. They might think something like, how can I afford that? Or rather than just saying this person is annoying, how can I be more patient? Right? One of them is fixed, doesn't go anywhere. One is a question, right? It's open to possibilities. And she found that these successful individuals had this growth mindset. Give you a few more examples here. People with a fixed mindset, they would avoid challenges because they would believe it would expose their flaws or limits, right? They feel like, well, if I don't have the skills, I don't want to expose that to everybody. They will never reach their potential because it would avoid pushing their comfort zone. They remain trapped in their current abilities, and they typically would blame others for their problems. Somebody with a growth mindset, they love challenges. They view it as a way to learn and to become more. They're on a constant quest for growth. They never believe in failure, only progress, right? If they have a failure, it doesn't tell them anything about they're capable of in the future. It just says where they were right now, right? They still believe that they're capable of learning and growing more in the future. And rather than blaming others for their problems, they take 100% accountability of their life, right? Just like the example of, hey, my boss is annoying, or they're frustrating, or my customers can't make decisions, right? Rather than just blaming it on somebody else, they take the ownership. How can I help them see the value of the product that I'm trying to sell. So how we're going to use this to identify some of our limiting beliefs is we're really going to focus on this top concept here for a fixed mindset is we want to identify what are some of the challenges that we have avoided because we might believe it'll expose our flaws or limits. So I want you to get your journal out and I want you to focus or journal on these questions here. We want to find what are some actions we've avoided taking because this can help us uncover some of the limiting beliefs that we have that are getting in the way. So what are some goals or actions you shied away from because you didn't feel capable? What are things you wanted to do but thought you couldn't? What are skills you've wanted but thought it was impossible to learn? What are things you would have liked to accomplish but never started on because you feared you might fail? Or maybe you feared the judgment of others? What are things that you've always claimed that you were bad at, but you would really like to be good at? And what are things you've wanted to own but told yourself that you couldn't? So what I'm going to do is we're going to start this timer up here for 3 minutes, and I want you to identify as many of these things as you can because it's going to help us uncover our limiting beliefs. And once you're done with this, go ahead and put done in the chat. We're going to find if 3 minutes is enough time for us to finish this. Maybe we need more. Maybe it's not enough time. We're going to find out. All right, it looks like lots of you guys are finishing up here, which is good. But as everyone else is finishing up, I want to bring up I want to give a little example of this that I think will also help with fixed mindset versus growth mindset. If you guys listen to the Goal Crazy podcast, I had somebody on. Valessa, we'll keep working on some of these, but I would just keep trying. There's probably things there, but if this is like your first time really reflecting like this, we're working new mental muscles to come up with these. But I had this gentleman on my podcast who I want to say he's like 37 or 38, and he owns several thousand apartments, right? Very successful real estate investor. But he talked about when he was first starting out, how he had driven by this building that he really wanted, and it was a $10 million building. And so we did the research and he talked to the bank and he found that he needed $3 million cash down to buy this building. However, at the time, he was just getting started, right? He didn't have $3 million, just like most of us, myself included, right? Didn't have $3 million just sitting aside in an account. So rather than just saying, like, I can't do this, he told himself, well, okay, I'm going to learn how to raise money. I'm going to learn the skill set of how to raise funds. And by learning that skill set, now he has several $100 million worth of real estate. And I think that probably because we very easily create these fixed mindsets, we're driving by, we're missing so many opportunities that we could potentially have that we just don't even consider, right? Like I probably drive by buildings like that all the time. Most of us do. And we would never even, we think, oh, those are for other people, right? Oh, I can't ever own a building like that. But rather than having that mindset, he was like, how am I going to figure this out? Right. So once you've started to identify these actions that you've avoided taking, the next thing we're going to do is hopefully you have some space to the right of them. Whoops. And I want you to write beside, so each action that you avoided taking, beside it, I want you to write what would be the underlying belief that got in the way of you taking action. So I have some examples, or what would maybe is the fear that's holding you back. So maybe an example is I've always wanted to start a YouTube channel, but I never have, right? And maybe there's this underlying belief that's getting in the way that says, well, if I post the videos, others are going to judge me and it'll hurt me because they'll judge me in a harming way and I'll feel bad about it. Or maybe like you have a belief that I'm not deserving of having an actually successful YouTube channel. So that's been getting in the way of you taking the actions that you want. Or another example, I've always wanted a nice house, but never pursued buying one. And maybe there's an underlying belief that tells you I'm not important enough to have a nice house in a fancy neighborhood. Or my friends and family will judge me if I have a house that's bigger than them. Or maybe you just have this belief that says, I just can't afford a big house, right? Either way, I want you to try and, for each of these actions that you've avoided, I want you to identify what's the underlying belief that's gotten in the way of you following through in that action. Does that make sense? Do you guys understand what we'll do? I'll do another timer for 3 minutes. I'm gonna put a yes or thumbs up or something if you understand how we're gonna do that. So you can divide this in two columns. So you have your actions you avoided, and then beside it, right, what is the underlying belief that got in the way of me taking action? Christina, I'm glad you enjoyed the podcast. They're a lot of fun to record. So let's do another timer here for 3 minutes, and we can start identifying some of those beliefs. And similar to before, just go ahead and put done in the chat. If we need to, I can always add more time. Oh, you guys did that quick. Yeah. Those of you guys who have finished, are these some, like, did this clarify for you some new underlying beliefs? Are these things that you might have already known were underlying beliefs that were getting in the way of you taking action? Yes, Valessa. All right, wonderful. Because until we identify these, it's easy to just fall victim to it, right? We haven't really clarified this is what's getting in the way. Hey, the same one keeps coming up. Yep. All right, nice. That's good. Yeah, you'll probably notice some themes of the type of things that we're struggling with mentally. All right, so what I'm going to have you do next here is I want you to also understand that we had originally formed these beliefs in a way to try and keep us safe, right? Our body or our mind wants to avoid us from taking a risk that's going to get us hurt or get us judged, right? There's this fear of being, it's kind of like just how we were evolved. We don't want to be kicked out of the tribe, right? So if we do something that everybody hates and we get kicked out of the tribe, that would be really bad for our safety, right? So it tries to keep us safe and liked by people. But we want to try and figure out how have these benefited us in the past, right? Why have you kept these beliefs? What are some ways they kept you safe and comfortable? So I'm going to do a shorter timer for this, but let's do one for just 2 minutes and you can identify how that one has kept you safe or comfortable. And then go ahead and put done in the chat once you're finished with that. Looks like most people are finishing up there. So now on the flip side of how these have helped you, I want you to also identify next, what have these beliefs cost you? How has this belief held you back in the past? What has it stopped you from pursuing? How has it made you feel about yourself to not take the actions that you wanted? What have you missed out on because of these beliefs? How would these beliefs limited you from serving others? Right? An example, maybe if you believe if I grow my business, I'm just going to let more people down. Right? That would completely get in the way of you serving lots of people. Maybe you think if I hire employees, they're going to see that I don't know what I'm doing. Right? That'd be a lie, right? When the truth might be, if you hire an employee, you're going to be the perfect mentor for somebody who's just getting started in your industry. Right? We want to find what are these beliefs costing us and costing others right now by having. So we'll do another timer for 2 minutes, and you can work on clarifying those things there. Good. Done, done. All right, and as you're finishing up there, anybody has a key limiting belief that they want to share with the group, right? I'm sure that lots of us are dealing with the same stuff. Maybe it's the feeling of not being enough, the fear of letting others down, the fear of others judging you, the fear of you failing. What are some of the beliefs that have held you back in the past? I know if you listen to my podcast, probably one of the big ones that I think it's just a never-ending rabbit hole, just continuing to pull back these layers like an onion, but just this feeling of being inadequate, right? And just all these beliefs that comes from there, and you just got to keep peeling them back. And I know that's one I've been working on a lot over the various years. If people got to know the real me, they wouldn't like me. So I put up walls and don't let people get close, right? When probably what you realize is, as crazy as it sounds, like the opposite happens, right? When we put up these walls and don't let people really know us, well, then you're hard to relate with, and then they don't like you, right? It's when if they did know you, of course they would like you. Uh, I think I fear success because if I try and succeed at something new, does that negate all the stuff I've done before? Oh, interesting. Yeah. Actually, I think that a lot of times people they have this fear of like, well, if I'm really successful, I'm going to be super busy. Like sometimes people will mention like, well, I'm fine with a lower paying job, so that way I don't become a slave to work, or that way I have time for my kids. And it's like, look, that's a limiting belief, right? There's plenty of people who probably earn way more than you and work less, right? It's like, but if you think that if you go earn more, you're going to be a slave to your work, well, of course you're not going to do it, right? But what if we had the belief that if I earn more, I'm going to have more freedom? And that could also be true, right? So do we want to keep these beliefs, right? If you look at that list of things that it's costed you, you're probably going to look at it's been a pretty expensive belief or a pretty costly belief to have, whether you're costing yourself opportunity or also costing the ability for you to serve others in a certain capacity. We don't want to keep these anymore. But before we start transitioning them away, I think that we need to find what caused these beliefs, right? It might have been experiences from our past. But our mind likes to keep track of almost this list of kind of like proof of like, well, here you have this belief that you're going to let others down, and here's why, because here's a list of other times you let other people down, right? And we don't want our subconscious mind to just hold this against us. So first we need to identify like what experiences cause these beliefs. So I'll give you a little example here before I have you start reflecting on this. When I was in college, I had these 3 sales jobs. And the first 2, I just like knocked it out of the park. I was the #1 salesman in both of those jobs. And then I started this new job, and it was like my first time getting more of like a real job where it wasn't like, oh, they hired a bunch of college kids to be their sales team to go door to door, right? It was like a job in a small local business with 12 employees, and most of the people had been there for 20 years. And I did the worst, right? I was there for like 6 months, and I just continued to be like at the very bottom. And it was the only job, and still the only job, that I just quit because I felt like I was embarrassed of how I was performing. And that experience led me to this belief. Like at first I thought like, oh, I'm a rock star at this, right? I'm a business genius, even though I was just like in my college years. But I formed this belief that I'm not as good as I think I am, right? And if I push myself to my limits, I'm just going to realize that I'm going to let myself down. And for a while I was trapped in that belief. And I think that similarly, you might have experiences that led you to form these beliefs. And I want you to try and figure out what could those be. So I'm going to do another timer here for, let's do 3 minutes, similar to before. This might be more time than we need, but let's do 3 minutes and see if you can identify what are some of the experiences you had that led you to form these beliefs. Is there a certain regret or failure that you've been holding on to as quote unquote proof that you can't do more? What experiences made you feel like you were not enough? Where in your life do you feel like you're losing or failing? What experiences you hold against yourself as proof that you're not enough? So let's do a timer for 3 minutes and go ahead and put in the chat done once you are finished identifying some of those things. All right, it looks like some of you guys are finished there. Once you're finished, go ahead and put done in the chat. If you feel like you need more time also, I can add another minute up here if some of you are still just getting started with this. Done. So before we continue on, I want to continue I want to finish the story there of me with this sales job, right? So I left this job, definitely felt down about myself for probably over a year, maybe even longer than that. But it was eventually, with some reflection and deep journaling questions, kind of like the ones that we've been doing, I realized that having that experience was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me, because it taught me that there were people out there who knew a lot more than I did, right? I didn't know it all, right? There were people who knew a lot more than I did, and that I could learn from them. And rather than just being this young, egotistical kid who was trying to prove everyone that I knew everything, it's like I was able to switch to like, how can I go find good mentors who can really help train me? Who's already accomplished what I want to do in my life, and that I can just ask them, how did you do it? Right? Because that's going to be my shortcut so that I can get there. And really, by having that experience, I was able to take myself to a much higher level when finding good mentors, finding people to learn from, reading books from people who were smarter than me. And it really turned out to be a better experience. And I think that until you maybe do that reflection and realize the lesson from there, it's easy to use these past experiences of evidence of what we're capable of. When really having a bad sales job it was not evidence of what I was capable of, right? It was false evidence of what I was capable of. All it did is it documented at the time where I was, and I was still learning. And that was a good thing for me to learn. Look, like there's plenty of stuff to learn. Go find people to learn from. So I imagine that's similar to you. We're holding on to these things that are false evidence. So what I want you to do is this list that you just made of these experiences from your past, I want you to label it at the top as false evidence. This is false evidence of who you are and what you are capable of. It tells you nothing about what you're capable of doing in the future. It only is going to show you where you were at the time. And probably a really good reflective exercise that you can do maybe after this call is I would go through those different experiences and see, what did you learn from them? Right? How has that helped grow you as a person? Because there are lessons there, even if it was the experience of, maybe you were picked on a bunch as a kid and, then it's caused these insecurities from it. But maybe you learned like, look, some people don't like to be picked on. And maybe that's made you a really caring and nice person rather than being more of a bulldog bully personality, right? And it's like, wow, that was a really powerful lesson it's taught you, but now we can also move on, right? If people disrespected you then, it doesn't mean that you're not worthy of respect in the future. So label it as false evidence. Know that this is not evidence of what you're capable of. It only shows where you were at the time and that we have much more capabilities to move forward with in the future. And kind of going, well, actually, one more thing I want to touch on before we get into that. Hold on. I actually just had, so because I brought up my podcast earlier, there's going to be another episode coming out on Tuesday that is just a great situation of this. And this guy, he had 3 corporate jobs, like as an adult, and all 3 of them he got fired from. And after his 3rd one, he ended up just going out and starting a business of his own. But he was talking about how after getting fired from 3 different jobs, his mind could have easily looked at that as evidence of like, look, I'm a failure, right? I can't even keep a job. What makes me think I'm capable of doing much more? But rather than falling victim to that story, he just viewed it as, look, clearly I'm not that great of an employee. It would be better for me to work for myself. And he wasn't a very successful employee, but he's worked for himself and he's made way more money working for himself than he ever did as an employee for another business. So just similarly, we want to try and identify these, and they're not evidence that if we've made mistakes in the past, that we will always make mistakes in the future. All right, so and one more little rant here on this topic, because I think this is just an area that it's easy to fall into, is I think that a lot of times we have this vision in our head that we're here in this center dot, right? Here I am, you, and you can be either moving towards success or you're moving towards failure. It's one or the other. You're either doing these really good things and just on a straight path to success, or you're doing bad things and on a straight road to failure. When the reality is, you're here, failure is here, and success is there. I've, just been blessed with the different opportunities here within my career to meet with lots of successful individuals or interview different people on my podcast. And I've never met somebody who they were naturally a genius and just success came, right? They went out, they made mistakes, they learned from them, they took messy action, and that's what led them to their success. One of my managers years ago, he was really like a mentor to me when I was working in sales. And he told me, Jason, one of the biggest differences between you and me is I've gotten millions of more no's than you have. I've gotten millions of more no's than you have from customers. And because of that, because of all of those failures that he had, it had sharpened his skill set to be a successful person in the industry, to be a successful manager for me that I could learn from. And I want you to just embody this, right? Lots of times we think, oh, I took a bunch of action and maybe I had some failure, but it's like, look, success comes from taking action. Failure comes from inaction. I've never met a successful person who got there from not taking any action, right? They went out and took action, and it was probably messy, right? But I've met plenty of people who, I'm not going to label anybody as a failure, but I've met plenty of people who haven't achieved success who just take very little action, right? If you're taking action, that's what's going to put you on the trajectory to success. So let's continue on. So now that we've identified some of our limiting beliefs, I want you to reframe these. What would you rather believe instead of your limiting belief, right? So maybe you have this belief, well, I'm not smart enough to do that. And a better belief could be, I'm going to learn as I go, right? Just get started. Limiting belief, I'll let others down. Maybe you switch that to there are people who need my unique help. Others will judge me, or my work will inspire others. I know when I was starting Goal Crazy, there was like a handful of people that I was really nervous of what they would think of me for starting a business like this. And I probably went like 2 years just avoiding these particular people. And it was like after a couple of years of doing Goal Crazy, I thought they would just judge me or have terrible things to say. I saw them actually coincidentally both over like a short period of time. I think it was around Christmas, and I just saw them both at some holiday gatherings. And it was interesting how both of these people that I was afraid of seeing, they both sought me out at this gathering, and they told me like, "Hey, I saw what you've been doing with Goal Crazy," and both of them told me that they've been wanting to do something similar. Whether it's they wanted to start a business of their own, or even some person told me they've always wanted to design a planner. And it was like this huge just realization. Like I thought these people would just crush me or make fun of me or tell me you shouldn't be doing something like this. And I can't promise that everybody's going to have the same experience with some of the people that are afraid of their judgments, but there is a really good chance that those people who you are really afraid of their judgments, you are going to be the person who inspires them. And especially if you have that belief, it's going to be a lot easier to take that action. Another limiting belief, and just some examples here. Look, this will take way too much time and effort versus I'm one connection away from changing my life. Going back to that example I had earlier of maybe you're somebody who wanted to launch a YouTube channel. You could easily have this limiting belief of this is going to take way too long for me to put out all this content to build a following. Or what if you had the belief, I'm one video away from completely changing my life? Right? If you have two people, one's got that belief and one has, this is going to take me a super long time to build into anything real, who do you think is more likely to go achieve the success that they want? Or I don't have time versus, again, these could be questions just like the growth mindset versus fixed mindset. How can I find more time? So let's do another timer here for, oops, I don't have a timer up on this. Actually, the next one. Let's do another timer for 3 minutes. Grab one for us. And let's try and identify what are the beliefs that you would rather have. So going through there, what beliefs would serve you better? What beliefs would align you with your goals? What beliefs would give you more confidence to take action? What would the next level version of yourself believe when it comes to there? And I'm going to tell you, as you're forming these new beliefs, when you're writing your affirmations every day, these are really powerful things for you to be writing with those affirmations, right? I'm one connection away from radically changing my life. I'm one deal away from completely changing my life, right? That's going to have a lot more inspiration for you to go out and work than this is going to take a really long time. So let's do a timer for 3 minutes and reframe some of our beliefs into something that'll serve us better. And go ahead and put done in the chat once you're finished with that. as you're finishing up here, go ahead and put one or two or several of your affirmations in the chat there, because I think we're all looking for good affirmations, and there's a good chance what you're working on, somebody else can also benefit from as well. Connect well with people. I like that, Melissa. Yeah, one of the ones that I've said to myself for a long time is I improve the lives of everybody I meet. And yeah, just going into conversations with that attitude. Can't guarantee I do it every time, but it just, yeah, makes me more friendly of a person if I believe that I can help them. Or with Goal Crazy, when I was first starting Goal Crazy, one of the things I said again and again and again in my head is like, there are people out there who are crying themselves to sleep every night because they don't have a system to help them accomplish their goals. All right. And that, again, I can't guarantee this was true or happened, but like saying that gave me so much more drive and inspiration to go out and build a planner and grow this business over the past 5 years and help tens of thousands of people with it than if I would have listened to the other thoughts like, you're going to put this planner out there and nobody's going to like it. Right. So we just want to rewire these, give ourselves better beliefs. Yeah, I have the time to take action steps every day to work towards my goals. That's really good. Yeah. Very nice. Looks like most of you guys done there with that. But Don, if you need more time, you can also feel free to throw that in the chat. We can add more time so you can continue working through this. Because then one of the last things we're going to get into today, my life is my own to lead. I like that. Yeah, I have the talent. Yeah, very good. No sulking self. Time to booster my strengths. Yeah. Yeah. And knowing like I have strengths, right? I have strengths already and just let them radiate out. So the next thing I want us to do is I want us to identify what would you look like with those beliefs? What would that next level version of you who fully encompass these beliefs, what would they look like? How would they act? What would you experience in your life? What new thoughts would you have? What new actions would you take? So I'm going to do another timer. Sorry, these timers did not get added up here. Let's do one more timer here and let's create a vision of what we look like when we have these beliefs. What would that next level version of you look like? Sorry. So I'll do a timer for 3 minutes and go ahead and put done once you're finished with that. And I would really try and just envision this for yourself. Try and get specific, right? Maybe it's like, if I had these beliefs, I would be doing my dream career. I'd be inspiring others. I would be able to have this car. I would finally go out and go on the trips that I know I deserve. Whatever it is, go ahead and really try and paint the picture for yourself. What would that next level version of you look like when you have that belief? We'll do a timer for 3 minutes. Let's see. Could you guys use some more time with that? You pretty good there. Done. Nice. Yeah, what would that next level version of you look like? Mostly done. Yeah, what new things would be on your horizon after you've created that belief? What would you be doing differently? How do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about what you're capable of? How would you be able to serve others? I'm gonna do a little bit more time. Let's do another 45 seconds. And then we'll keep moving on here. All right, are most people good there? Use more time. We're ready to keep on going. Done. All right. Done. Very good. All right, so the last thing we're going to do here today is we're going to end with another visualization dreaming exercise to bring this, just to wrap this all up here together. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and sit back in your chair, get comfortable, close your eyes, just lean back, relax, close your eyes, and go ahead and take a deep breath in. And let it out. Take another deep breath in. And let it out. I want you to bring to your attention the fixed mindset version of you. And I want you to imagine what your life would look like if you went a full year. If it was this time next year, January 18th of 2025, you had spent that whole year with a fixed mindset, with those limiting beliefs holding you back. What would your life look like after another year with limiting beliefs? Where would you be? What would be the same? What would be different? What would be worse? How would you feel about yourself? How would you feel about your life? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel light? Is it warm? Is it cold? What emotions would you be experiencing? And after you have a good vision and feeling of what that would be like, I want you to now put that behind you. And I want you to envision, what would your life look like if you spent the whole year with a growth mindset? If you formed new, better beliefs? If you stepped into the unknown, took the actions that you've always wanted to take, where would you be? What would your life look like then? What would you have more of? What would you have less of? What would you be experiencing? How would you feel about yourself? How would you feel about your life? What emotions would you be experiencing? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel light? Warm? Cold? What type of thoughts would you be having? What new beliefs would you have about yourself at this point? And once you've really created a vision of what this would look like, to go a full year taking these actions you've wanted to, living out your growth mindset. You can really feel what you'd be like. I want you to look through the eyes of this new you, this future self. And through the eyes of that future self, I want you to look back to your current self now, who's here on the Zoom call. Almost like you're looking through some sort of time portal where you can look back and you can see this past version of yourself who's here right now on the Zoom call. And looking through the eyes of your new self at the previous you on the Zoom call, I want you to give your past self some advice to help you get to that future place. What advice would you tell them? What does this current version of you need to hear right now from the future you? I'm going to give you some fill in the blanks here to help. Looking at the eyes, looking through the eyes of the new you, your current self here at the Zoom call. I want you to tell them, what I really want you to know is, share with them some advice. I want you to tell them that it really makes me sad to see you and explain to them how you've seen them with these limiting beliefs in the past hold them back. Tell them it's made me really sad because I know that you can tell them what they're capable of and they let those limiting beliefs go. After you've given them this advice, I want you to bring your awareness back to the current version of you here at the Zoom call. I want you to feel what it would feel like to just have received all of that advice from your future self. I want you to feel that advice and those lessons just sink into your body, knowing that you can follow the advice. I want you to feel that spread through your body. I want every cell in your body to take this advice, to learn it, to memorize it, to make it part of you. So you can just live this advice out. After you can get a sense of this version of you who's embodied this advice, after you get a sense of this version of you who's embodied the advice and is on the trajectory to get you to that future life that you want. So you can feel and experience what that'd be like. I'm going to count to 3. And once we get to 3, you're going to open your eyes. And we're going to turn back to our Zoom call. And I want you to know you are on that trajectory to that new version of you. 1, 2, 3. Come on back, you guys. And then what I'd like you to do before we continue on here is whatever that piece of advice is that your future you just told yourself, I want you to write it down. Write it down there in your notepad. And after you do that, go ahead and put in the chat, how was that experience for you? Did you get some good advice? Could you notice a shift in how you felt when you envisioned yourself holding on to that fixed mindset versus could you notice a different feeling when you experienced the version of you who just lived out your growth mindset, your new beliefs? All good, Valesa. Good luck with your appointment. How was that experience for you guys? Yeah, you felt lighter. Yeah, you're not carrying all these things with you. Did you get some good advice from yourself? Maybe you just struggled with this, and that's okay too. If this one was a little, maybe a little bit loopier than what you were expecting when you signed up for this, that's okay. Amy, yep. Good luck. But that's what I've got for us for today. So if anyone wants to share kind of their experience with what they just had there, Joyce, I'm glad it was powerful for you. Yeah. That's what we've got for today. So I'm going to challenge you, go ahead and post in the Facebook group what stood out to you most about today's workshop. And then make sure you have in your calendar, our next workshop is going to be on January 25th. Same time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. So whatever time zone this one was, it'll be at the same time. So make sure that's on there. And if you can't make it, it'll be put in our training area. But guys, that's what I got for you. So thank you and keep up the great work. All right, I look forward to continuing this 30-day challenge with all of you guys.